You don't wake up one day and suddenly feel old. It doesn't hit like a lightning bolt. It sneaks in. You notice it first in the little things. Maybe it's when you stand up from the couch and your knees feel like they're whispering, maybe even warning you. Not with sharp pain, but with a kind of tired stiffness, like the joints are thinking twice before cooperating. And at first, you don't question it. You brush it off. Maybe it's just the weather. Maybe you slept funny. But then it keeps happening. You rise from bed slower. You stretch more, but it helps less. You climb stairs differently. You start looking for the railings. And somewhere in the back of your mind, the thought creeps in. Is this just how it goes after 60? Most people will nod and say yes. They'll tell you it's wear and tear, that it's natural, expected. But I need to say something different, something you might not have heard before. Joint pain is not a life sentence, and it's certainly not inevitable. In fact, a good portion of the stiffness, inflammation, and discomfort you feel, especially after the age of 60, doesn't come from age at all. It comes from what you eat, not the obvious junk food either. I'm talking about foods that have sat in your kitchen for years, foods that you've trusted, even believed were helping you. That's what makes this conversation so urgent, because while your body has been asking for help, you may have unknowingly been feeding it the very things that make it worse. You see, food is never neutral, especially not now. After 60, your body's ability to bounce back from inflammation slows down. Your gut lining gets thinner, your joints become more reactive. What once felt like nothing more than a snack can now quietly become the spark for an inflammatory cascade. The kind that doesn't scream, but smolders. The kind that doesn't show up right away, but builds its message into every twinge, every step that feels a little less steady than the last. And it's not just your joints that suffer. Inflammation that starts in your knees can make its way to your brain. It can cloud your thinking, disrupt your sleep, sap your energy in a way that no amount of coffee can fix. And the worst part? You might not connect any of it to food. You might be thinking, this is just how getting older works, but it's not. It's how a body responds when it's fed signals of stress every single day, through the very foods we've been told are safe. I want you to imagine your joints like a well-oiled machine. Every bone cushioned by a layer of cartilage, every movement assisted by synovial fluid that acts like natural shock absorbers. Now, imagine introducing friction into that system, a little at a time, not by injury, not by accident, but by daily inputs, subtle chemical triggers that cause that cushion to shrink, that fluid to thin, that shock absorber to dry out. What you're left with is raw contact, bone against bone, movement that should be smooth becoming stiff. That's what certain foods do. They don't feel like poison going in, but day after day, they chip away at the very structures that keep you upright, agile, and comfortable. Now, I know what you're probably wondering. What are these foods? What should I stop eating? But before we jump into specifics, let's slow down. Because this isn't about fear. This isn't about perfection. This is about understanding. You don't need a strict diet. You don't need to count every calorie or memorize some complex food chart. What you need is to recognize patterns, to see how your body responds, to know which foods consistently leave you feeling heavier, stiffer, foggier, and which ones bring a sense of ease. Let me tell you about Margaret, 72, lively, independent, loves gardening. She came to me complaining of sore fingers, nothing major, just enough to make it harder to grip her pruning shears. She assumed it was just arthritis. But when we looked at her meals, one thing stood out. She started every morning with a healthy cereal, bran flakes, skim milk, banana slices. It sounded good on paper, but that combination was sending her blood sugar soaring and her inflammation with it. We made one small shift, steel-cut oats with cinnamon and walnuts. That was it. 2 weeks later, she called me and said, I can open jars again without thinking about it. That's how fast your body can respond when you stop feeding it, the very thing that's been irritating it. You don't need to change everything. You just need to start paying attention. Start treating your meals like information. Because that's what food is. It's not just fuel, it's instruction. Every bite tells your body something. It either says, calm down, you're safe, or stay on alert, keep the inflammation going. And once you begin noticing which foods create peace and which ones stir up problems, the choices get easier. Not because someone else told you, but because your body starts speaking more clearly. You begin to feel the difference between a day fueled by support and a day running on silent sabotage. And that, right there, is the key to long-term change. Not willpower, not discipline, awareness. Once you feel the difference in your own body, you don't go back. You won't want to. Because that stiffness in the knees, that burning in the hips, that morning ache in your hands, it's not just aging, it's your body asking for better support, and you finally have the power to give it what it's been waiting for. That's where we begin, not with a list, not with a lecture, but with a shift in attention, a quiet, consistent decision to stop feeding the fire, to start feeding the foundation, because your joints aren't asking for miracles, they're asking for respect. And now, you know how to give it. When you begin noticing the difference, when your body finally starts to respond to that shift in rhythm, it's like waking up from a fog you didn't know you were living in. You stop chalking everything up to getting older and start asking a different question. What else have I been doing every day that might be quietly pushing me away from the health I want? And for most people, especially after 60, one of the biggest culprits is hiding in plain sight. It's in your sandwiches, your snacks, your refrigerator drawer. It's the thing that gets praised for being convenient, easy, even lean. But the truth is, it's not nourishing your body, it's depleting it. Processed meats, ham, deli turkey, salami, bacon, those neat slices wrapped in plastic, ready for the sandwich press or a quick lunch. They look harmless, they taste familiar, and they promise a shortcut to protein. But the cost? That's what most people never talk about. These meats are treated, preserved, flavored, and colored using chemicals your body doesn't recognize. Nitrates and nitrites, those preservatives used to keep the meat pink and shelf-stable, don't just stay in the package, they enter your bloodstream. And once inside, they create tiny sparks of inflammation. Not dramatic enough to send you to the ER, not loud enough to sound the alarm, but daily, steadily, they raise the baseline tension inside your body. Especially in your joints, especially in the areas already asking for help. You feel it when you sit down and your knees resist. You feel it when you reach and your shoulder tugs. You feel it when your fingers lose that effortless strength you didn't realize you depended on. And it's easy to miss the connection because no one ever told you that what's in your sandwich might be behind the swelling in your hands. But your body knows. It always knows. And once you stop putting those processed messages into your system, it doesn't take long for the fog to lift, for the pain to quiet down, for your joints to breathe again. Let me tell you about Robert, 67. Used to be a high school football coach. Always had a sharp mind and a strong handshake. But when he came to me, he said something that stuck. I just feel like I'm dragging my body behind me. He wasn't eating junk. He was eating smart. At least, that's what he thought. Turkey sandwiches for lunch, low-fat cheese, a little ham for breakfast. But day after day, that small stream of preservatives, sodium, and hidden sugars was adding up to a tidal wave inside his body. And the first place it showed up, his joints. We didn't overhaul his life. We didn't send him on some cleanse. We just replaced the deli meat with grilled chicken, sometimes salmon, sometimes eggs. We gave him real food that his body could use, not fight against. And within 2 weeks, he called me and said, I don't feel like I'm dragging anymore. I feel like I'm leading again. That's the kind of shift we're after. Not a transformation that takes months, but a message you send with every meal. One that says, I see you. I hear what you're asking for, and I'm going to stop making you fight so hard. Because your joints aren't the enemy. They're not the problem. They're the messenger. And the message they've been delivering through pain, stiffness, swelling, is that your body is still trying, still listening, still hoping you'll notice that you're not broken. You're just inflamed. And inflammation responds to food faster than it responds to almost anything else. So, if you're ready to move better, to feel steadier, to stretch without wincing and rise without hesitation, it starts here. Not with more pills, not with more treatments, but with fewer things that keep setting your joints on fire. And here's the beautiful thing. When you remove just one harmful ingredient, your body doesn't punish you. It rewards you. It steps forward. It leans into healing. Because that's what it's always wanted to do. So, look in your fridge. Look at your habits. Look at what you've been calling normal. And ask yourself, is this food making me stronger, or just filling space while slowly wearing me down? You don't need a dramatic answer. You just need an honest one. Because from that honesty, everything else begins to change. You start to feel the difference, not just in the way your joints move, but in the way your body starts trusting you again. That's what most people miss. Healing isn't just about stopping what's hurting you. It's about rebuilding a relationship with your body, one choice at a time. And as that trust deepens, your awareness sharpens. You begin to notice other patterns you never questioned before. The things you were told were good for you, healthy, safe, but that somehow always left you feeling heavier, stiffer, a little more fogged in than the day before. And one of the worst offenders. It's sitting in your fridge right now, wrapped in health claims and promises of a better you. Low-fat dairy. It sounds like a virtue, doesn't it? Fat-free milk, light yogurt, reduced fat cheese. It's been drilled into your head for decades. Cut the fat, cut the risk. But the truth is, in trying to make dairy healthier, we've stripped it of what made it tolerable to begin with. And what's been added in its place, sugars, gums, stabilizers, artificial flavors, is exactly what your joints have been protesting all this time. See, fat isn't the enemy, especially not for joints. Real fat, the kind found in full-fat yogurt, grass-fed butter, or aged cheese, acts like a cushion. It carries fat-soluble vitamins that reduce inflammation. It supports hormones that regulate repair. But when you remove that fat and dump in synthetic fillers to mask the taste, what you're really doing is confusing your body. Because your body knows how to digest food, it doesn't know how to digest chemistry. Every spoonful of that fat-free fruit yogurt you think is helping your bones. It's flooding your bloodstream with sweeteners that spike your insulin and quietly fuel the very inflammation that stiffens your knees. Every splash of skim milk in your coffee, every slice of low-fat cheese on your sandwich, it's not making you leaner. It's making you more inflamed, more bloated, and more brittle from the inside out. And when you're over 60, every one of those signals hits harder. I had a patient once, Grace, a former nurse, tough, proud, self-disciplined. She never ate junk, never missed her morning walk, but her fingers were always swollen. Her knees ached every evening. She swore it was just arthritis catching up with her. But when we looked at her diet, it became clear. Every morning started with a fat-free yogurt cup. Every afternoon, skim milk in her tea. At night, a slice of low-fat cheese and some fruit. On paper, it looked clean, but in her body, it was chaos. We made one change. Full-fat Greek yogurt, unsweetened, topped with cinnamon and a handful of berries. Within 2 weeks, her joints began to loosen. She didn't feel as puffy. Her digestion improved. She started waking up without the morning stiffness that had become her normal. And that's the point. What you think is normal might just be something your body's been enduring for far too long. Because the older you get, the more your body asks for quality, not compromise. It doesn't want imitation health. It wants the real thing. Real fats, real nutrients, real foods that don't confuse your system into thinking it's under attack. So, the next time you see that low-fat label and think you're making a smart choice, pause. Ask yourself, has this made me feel stronger, clearer, more comfortable in my joints? Because the truth is, your joints don't care what the package says. They care what the food does. And what processed low-fat dairy does over time is break down the very stability you've spent decades building. But when you make that shift, when you choose full fat over fake, you don't just feel better. You feel supported, you feel grounded, and your joints, they respond with gratitude you can feel in every step. And as your joints begin to soften, as that quiet inflammation starts to fade and your body whispers its cautious thank you, something else begins to come into view. Another food, another daily ritual you may have trusted for years, without realizing what it's been doing to you. Not in a dramatic way, not in some instant wave of discomfort, but slowly, steadily, day after day. It's not the food itself, but the oil it's cooked in. You'd never know it by the way it's marketed. You've seen the labels: cholesterol-free, light, heart-healthy. You've probably used it for decades without thinking twice. It's in the bottle next to your stove, in the salad dressings, in the frozen meals, in the baked goods. But inside your body, the truth is very different. Because those refined seed oils, canola, soybean, corn, sunflower, safflower, don't act like neutral fuel. They act like kindling. And the fire they feed burns in your joints. You might not feel it after one meal. You might not even notice it after 1 month. But that slow, consistent use, frying, roasting, dressing, baking, it builds something over time. A kind of internal rust. An invisible stickiness that settles in your joints. It doesn't scream for attention. It just makes everything feel tighter, like your knees are moving through molasses. like your fingers take longer to warm up, like every joint in your body is working just a little harder than it used to. And the reason is simple. These oils are unstable. They're processed under high heat, often with chemicals, then bleached, deodorized, and bottled. And once they're inside you, they oxidize. They trigger inflammation not because you're allergic or sensitive, but because they were never meant to be consumed in the quantities we eat them today. Especially not in an older body, where recovery is slower, where hormone balance is more delicate, where joints are already fighting 1,000 tiny battles just to stay flexible. I remember one woman in particular, Eileen, age 67. Her hands ached every time she cooked. She used to love making dinner for her family, but lately, even stirring a pot hurt. She'd switched to vegetable oil because she was told it was healthier, but her joints told a different story. We swapped it for extra virgin olive oil. That was it. No other changes, just the oil. Within 2 weeks, she called me, crying, not from pain, but from relief. She could stir again. She could move her fingers again. She felt like herself again. Because real fats, the kind your body recognizes, don't attack your joints. They protect them, they lubricate, they nourish, they quiet inflammation instead of igniting it. You don't need to overcomplicate it. Just ask yourself a simple question every time you reach for that bottle. Is this calming my body or stirring it up? If it's not olive oil, avocado oil, ghee, or real butter, think twice. And it's not just about cooking, it's about what's hiding in the ingredients list. That store-bought hummus, that salad dressing, that snack bar. They all use these oils to stretch the shelf life. But in stretching the shelf, they shorten your comfort. And you've lived too long, fought too hard, been through too much to spend your days battling the food you eat. That's why these changes matter. Not because they're trendy, but because they restore something you might have forgotten: ease. You shouldn't have to brace yourself before standing. You shouldn't have to wince when reaching for a cupboard. You shouldn't have to dread the stairs or think twice before bending down. That isn't the cost of aging. That's the cost of years of silent inflammation. And now you get to do something about it. So the next time you pour oil into a pan, remember, you're not just cooking dinner. You're either feeding the quiet inflammation that stiffens your joints, or you're calming it, silently, one drop at a time. And as your kitchen starts to shift, less processed oil, more thoughtful fat, fewer inflammatory ingredients, and more of what your joints actually understand, there's one last food to face. And this one, more than the rest, has woven itself into daily life so completely, so invisibly, that it's often the hardest to see clearly. It's not flashy, it's not sweet. It doesn't come in a wrapper or sit in the freezer. It comes in a loaf, a sandwich, a morning toast, a quiet bite that says comfort, familiarity, normal. But in your joints, it doesn't behave that way. Refined white flour. It's not just the bread. It's the muffins, the crackers, the cookies, the pasta, the multi-grain products that sound healthier than they are. It's what's left over after wheat has been stripped of fiber, stripped of nutrients, stripped of the parts your body can use, and what remains is the part that spikes your blood sugar, feeds silent inflammation, and acts like sugar the moment it hits your bloodstream. Your brain might feel comfort, but your joints, they feel the flame. Because that's what this kind of flour does. It doesn't just feed you, it fuels your immune system to stay alert. Too alert. It sets off reactions that your gut might have tolerated at 30, but now, in your 60s or 70s, no longer can. Your gut lining has changed. Your microbiome is more sensitive. Your digestion is slower. And when that flour hits your system, especially in large daily doses, it leaks into the bloodstream, triggers the immune system, and sends the message: defend, attack, protect. And where does your immune system go when it's been told to fight? Wherever the body is weakest. For most, that means the joints, the knees, the hands, the spine, the same places you now feel pressure when you get up, the same stiffness in your fingers when you open a jar, the same strange fatigue in your lower back after walking even a short while. You don't feel this after one bite of bread. You feel it after years of repetition. After a lifetime of treating refined flour as neutral when in fact, it's been anything but. And the hardest part? It doesn't feel like a villain. It feels like a habit. A sandwich for lunch, crackers with tea, toast with butter. But slowly, these innocent meals add up to a chemistry your body no longer wants to manage. And your joints, once fluid and smooth, begin to protest. But here's the good news. Your joints are never past the point of change. Not if you listen, not if you respond, Not if you gently begin the process of swapping out what weakens for what strengthens. It doesn't have to be cold turkey. You don't need to cut every slice of bread from your life, but you do need to choose better. A dense, sprouted grain. A slice of sourdough made the traditional way. A bowl of quinoa instead of pasta. Sweet potatoes instead of crackers. Not as punishment, as partnership. Because when your meals start to change, your joints start to speak a new language. Not one of resistance, but relief. I've seen it too many times to doubt. One woman in her late 70s went from icing her knees daily to walking up the driveway without a single pause, just by making a few changes in her staples. And she didn't miss the bread. She didn't crave the crackers, because what she gained, ease, mobility, independence, was far more satisfying than anything a baked good could offer. That's what this is really about. Not just food, not just joints, but your ability to move through your day without guarding yourself, without bracing, without calculating which chair will be easiest to rise from. That freedom is built, one choice at a time, and it's always closer than it feels. So, when you look at your plate, when you make your next grocery list, when you open your pantry, ask the question that changes everything. Not, is this familiar, but is this helping me move or holding me still? Because your joints have a voice, and when you stop silencing them with sugar and starch and swollen signals, you start hearing what they've been asking for all along: support. And that support, it doesn't have to come from a supplement. It doesn't have to come from surgery. It can come from something as simple as what you eat and what you stop eating, from swapping out friction for fluidity, from choosing foods that help you move with ease, not struggle with every step. The best part? You're not chasing youth. You're reclaiming control. You're writing a new chapter in your body's story, one not based on decline, but on renewal, because your joints haven't given up. They're just waiting for the message to change. And now, finally, that message is yours to send.